The following tutorial is a video sample taken from my new downloadable course for Studio One 5.5. The course contains over 6 hours of content and will give you a solid foundation in everything you need to know to capture and arrange your ideas in Studio One. If you'd like more information on the course, just visit quantaaudio.com/store or check out the links in the description area or the pinned comment below. Thanks for your support. Automation within Studio One is super simple to get done and record, and you also have a lot of creative tools to come up with really rich and complex sounds at the same time. So we're going to start off with the most simplest way to record your automation. And on this first track here, I have a MyTie loaded. Now I haven't done anything with the MyTie except for loading a preset, and that's about it. I recorded a simple melody here. And that's everything that I've done to this track. And what we're going to do is automate the filter cutoff on the MyTie. So I do have the Atom controller, and that is pre-mapped to MyTie. And I'm going to use the controller to automate the cutoff filter. But don't worry, we're going to take a look at a third-party VST and see how you can go about mapping your external controller to the parameters on third-party VSTs, and then adding automation to that. So let's go ahead and let's just play this back really quickly, and then I'll go ahead and add the automation. Okay, so I kind of wanted to open up that filter on these longer notes here. So the only thing that we need to do is just come back to the beginning, enter into record, and I'm going to open up the MyTie. And all we need to do is turn the knob, and that is it. Okay, and that's all you need to do to record your automation. If you notice here, this now has a little empty circle in the center, letting us know that this parameter does have automation on it. But let's close the MyTie, and I just want to mention we do have automation control up at the top here, but that's going to be for track automation. What we're working with now is part automation. So in Studio One, we have part automation, which is going to be contained within our part here, and hopefully you can see this little line here that represents the automation that was recorded. Now we also have track automation, and we're going to take a look at that in just a moment. So now if I double click on this MIDI part to open up the editor, in our part automation lane down at the bottom, we can see that cutoff, this was not there before I recorded it, but when you record the automation in the manner in which I just did, you have this parameter added to your part automation lane, and we can see the automation that was recorded. Let's press W to zoom out a bit. Okay, so we can see all of that here. Now, when we record in real time the automation to a parameter, it's going to be added here. But if there is a parameter that we'd like to add manually and then draw in our automation, we have that option as well. So what we could do is right click on a tab, and then we have add, or we can click on the ellipsis here to the left, and that will open up the automation panel. And then we can choose another parameter. Let's see, let's come to the filter. Let's try out the resonance. I'll double click on that. You can see it's added to the parameter list here on the left. Click close, and we can see now we have a tab for that. And then at this point, I can come in while the arrow tool is active and add points where I'd like. Just notice that this is snapping to our grid, and that is because snap is turned on and it's set to 16th notes. So these points are going to be added on 16th note values. If you'd prefer to really precisely or freely place them, turn your snap off, and you can see now I can freely place this wherever I'd like. If I turn the snap back on and change the quantized value to, say, quarter note, then you see we're going to add points at the quarter note setting. So now that we have these points added, I could just select, click, hold on a point and drag that up. And when you hover in between the two automation points, you get this white circle. And with this, you can add bends or curves, automation curves. So now we've manually added automation to our resonance, and we can see that represented in our MIDI part up above. Again, hoping that that shows up in the video. Let's close out the editor and open up our MyTi, and let's play this back with the automation added. And take note, as I mentioned, with the cutoff, you see this circle here in our resonance knob. We now have a circle here letting us know that automation is contained for this parameter. So let's play back. So it's a really super simple process to record your automation live within Studio One. And at any time, as we just saw, you can double click on the MIDI part and then come to the part automation lane and make your adjustments. We can double click on a point to remove it out. We can hold Control and A to select all of our points and then press Delete on the keyboard to remove. If we'd like to remove an automation parameter, we can right click on it and then just click on Remove. So that is automation that we record live and is contained within our MIDI part. Let's close out the edit window, and I just want to mention that we do have the automation tracks available. And if we open up the MyTi again and come back to that resonance, if I were to right click on this and choose Edit Automation, notice here our track changes the view to automation, and we now have an automation track for our resonance, which is going to be different than when it's contained within our part. This is actually going to be a separate track outside of our MIDI part. So once we chose to edit, our track column switches to an automation view. If we'd like to add points to the curve, we can see resonance is here. And as soon as I add points, we switch to read mode. Let's come back to the MyTi, and that's what I was saying before. If you're going to be working with part automation, this can remain off. But as soon as you add an automation track, this needs to be active in order to read the information. If you want to record live on an automation track, you need to arm this for touch or latch. So now as I add points, actually let's double click to remove that. I can click, hold, and move this up. This functions the same as what we saw in the part automation lane. Again, if I hover between two automation points, we have that circle, and I can add a curve, automation curve here, and one there. Let's add a point here and here. Click, hold, and pull this up. Add a curve. Now we are not stuck with this automation view that we're seeing right now. So if we'd prefer to see the MIDI track as it was before, we can click on this automation show button here, or we can press A on the QWERTY keyboard, and then we return to the MIDI view. But if we'd like to see our automation track at the same time, we can come to the bottom left corner of the MyTi and click on that button there. And here's that automation track that was added and the automation that we put in manually. We can also adjust the automation mode here for read, touch, latch, or write. And this display here is going to show the current value wherever the song is playing back. So if I switch to the beginning of bar 5, notice the percentage is going to change to represent what that automation is doing for our resonance at this point here. So let's open up our MyTi and play this back. Okay, so sonically, this is going to work the exact same way as if we recorded it to our MIDI part. And when we record to the MIDI part, it's contained within that part. So whenever you move the part, it will obviously follow along with it. Now, we do have a setting within our options menu to be sure that our track automation follows along with the instrument that it's assigned to as well. And I believe that's on by default. So if I wanted to move this MIDI part to a different area of our arrangement and I click, hold, and drag that, then you'll notice that our automation follows along with it. So that will make it easy for you to work with arranging your song. And if we come to Studio One options and we would like advanced automation, we can see here automation follows events. That's checked. If I deselect that and apply, click OK. And then when I move that, this automation does not follow along with our event. But I'm not sure why you would not want that behavior. So if you are having an issue where it's not following, just be sure that you come and check this box here, apply, OK, and now we're good to go. Now we have a few cool tools that we could work with when adding or editing our automation. And just one thing to note, if I come to the top of this automation track, you notice we have a trim tool that becomes available. And when that becomes available at the top, I can click, hold, and push this automation down or pull it up. So this could be a good way to experiment or to adjust your settings to get it just right. But I think this is a great tool for experimenting. So just know that you come to the top, your arrow changes to the trim tool. And next I'm going to Control A to select all of our automation points, press delete on my keyboard to remove those out. Actually, let me Control Z because I don't want to remove my MIDI part. So with the arrow tool active, I'll click, hold, and drag to select the points, press delete. And I'm going to press 5 to switch to the paint tool. Let's actually click on that and hold to select the freehand. And with this active, we can add freehand automation to our automation track. And this is going to work just the same in the part automation lane here. So we have the pencil tool here. If I press 3 to make that active, we could do the same thing here that is going to be added to the quantize value if you have your snap turned on. So if I change this to 16th notes and draw that back in, okay, so it's going to function exactly the same in the editor as here. In the arrange view, my snap is turned on and the quantize is set to 16th notes. So these are pretty much being added at that value. Some of them will be cleaned up based on your settings within the options menu. Now let's come back up to the paint tool, click and hold. We also have a line tool. So with that active, we can click and add precise lines. Like so. Click and hold. We've got parabola, square, triangle, saw, sine. Let's select the sine. And with our snap on, I'm going to change this to quarter note. Click, hold, and drag that in. And actually, maybe I want to select a higher value, so I'll undo that. Let's go for half. Click, hold, and drag. And this is probably going to sound very crazy, but let's check it out. Actually, that was kind of cool. Now we can also use the transform tool to adjust the automation that's within the automation track or the part automation lane. So I'm clicking and holding and selecting the transform tool. Now we have these crosshairs, and when I click, hold, and drag, let's just work with the sine automation here. Now in the center I have the hand, so I can then move this up or down to make it smaller or larger. At the top, we can pull that out to make it larger. or bring it in. The corners, we can adjust like so. You can even flip this automation around. The same as with the other corners in the front. We can pull that in. Let's just flip it around and check out how this sounds. Okay, cool. Now, if we'd like to undo any of the automation that we've done, of course, we can always Control Z, but if you'd simply like to remove the transform field here, you can right click on it and press delete. And then we have just our automation points. So now let's quickly take a look at mapping an external controller to the parameter so that you can add your automation with your external controller. So here on this second track, I have a Hive, and this is a very simple process. So for instance, this, I've got a preset loaded here. So what if I want to adjust that cutoff here with the atom, because that's not mapped. So all you need to do is, if you notice here in the upper left hand corner, we also can click on this gear within our VST, and we kind of have a similar window here. We can click once on the cutoff. You see that that's populated. And actually these are connected because I believe I did that previously, but generally you'll see just a gray area if yours is not set up. Turn the knob on your controller or the fader that you'd like to assign. So if I were to turn knob 4, notice this changes to knob 4. If I turn 3, that changes to 3, 2, and 1 is the one that I'd like to assign to the cutoff. So in either of these fields, I can click on the arrow, make sure that that turns yellow, and now if we take a look at the cutoff here, we can see that that is then adjusting. So from here, the process is very simple. I can just enter into record. Press stop. Let's close out our Hive. And you can see we not only recorded the 2 MIDI notes, but we can see the part automation within this window here. Let's press 1 to bring back the arrow tool and double click on this. And we can see that the cutoff tab was added to our part automation lane. Clicking on that, we can see our recorded automation. Now the final thing we'll take a look at is automation on audio tracks. So let's come back to the beginning of our song, and I'm going to press T as in Tom to bring up our add tracks dialog. Let's click on audio. I'll choose OK, just a basic mono track. All right, now our audio tracks are automatically going to be set up to have volume and panning automation tracks. We don't see them, but if we were to click on the Show Automation button or press A on the QWERTY keyboard, we can see that the view changes to see all of our automation on all of our tracks, and we can see our audio track. If I down-click, we can see volume and panning. So we can select either one of these. These have already been added to the track whenever you create an audio track. I can then switch to panning if I'd like that. So again, we can come in and add points. And manually do this. We have our automation curves in the center. If I let me press A again. If I Control A, I'll just click, hold, and drag, delete those out. And again, we can come to the transform tool, click, hold. Let's do saw. We are set to half a bar. Our snap is turned on. Okay, so now when we play back, I'm going to mute the other tracks here and open up the console. We can see our automation that's been added to our panning here. Okay, so if we were to switch to the volume and do the same thing, now our fader is going to have the automation. Okay, now let's come to the arrow tool, click, hold, and drag to select these points. Let's switch back to our panning, click, hold, and drag to select these points. Now, if you want to do this manually, then you can be sure that at the bottom here of our channel or within our automation track, click on the read. Be sure this is set to touch or latch. I'm going to choose touch. Let's come back to the beginning and enter into record. And I'm going to click, hold. And press the space bar to stop. And you can see our automation hidden because you can barely see it because we have the pan selected for view. So if we were to choose volume, then we can see that automation has been added when I clicked hold and used my mouse here. Now, of course, we could always assign an external controller to this fader here. So all you have to do is be sure that you click once. It's already active in this parameter display window here because I just was working with it. It was the last parameter that I touched. And we have knob 1 from the atom. So I could click the arrow and now I'm controlling the fader with knob 1 on the atom. So this is how you would use your external controller to make that assignment. I'll click again to detach those. And once you're happy with your automation, it probably would be a good idea to change from the touch here at the bottom of the channel or within your automation track and change that to just read. Let's close out our mix console and switch from the automation view because I just want to be sure to remind you that even if you're not in the show automation view for the track column, you can click on the button down below and then let's scroll down and we can see the automation that's been added and our volume and pan on 2 discrete tracks. Now there may be times when you want to automate the main channel on the mix console, so all you'd have to do with this is open up the console, right click, and then choose Edit Automation. Let's close out the mix console. And now we can see our main now is ready for adding automation to. Let's click, hold, and drag and remove those out. If we'd like to remove automation tracks, just right click on it and then we can choose to remove track. Now, the last thing I'll show is settings within the options menu. As I mentioned, when you add an audio track, it's automatically going to have volume and pan automation tracks contained or added to it. All you need to do is click on this to expand them out. Even if you haven't added automation, they're going to be there. So if we Control, comma to bring up the options menu, then on advanced automation, we can see at the bottom default envelopes for new audio tracks. So volume and pan are checked by default. If I were to select mute as well and apply that, click OK. Let's shift T to remove that track out. I'll press T as in Tom to bring up the add tracks. Click OK. We've added another audio track. Now, when I click on the bottom left button to expand that out, we can see now we have all three, the volume, pan, and mute. but I'm going to Control comma and take the mute off, apply, okay. All right, so this has been a look at automation within Studio One. I hope that you got some useful tips and understand better how you can go about recording and editing your automation.